The galaxy knew the princess only by one name, the Veiled One. No one had ever seen her face. She was from the planet Celaria, a rich and powerful world. Many aliens wanted to bond with her, nobles, warriors, even princes. But there was one rule. They had to bond without seeing her face. Those who refused were never allowed to try again. Some said her face was cursed. Others believed she was hiding something terrible. But still, the line of suitors never ended. They came from stars far away, hoping for her hand, and for the wealth that came with it. But one by one, they all refused when they heard the condition. Until the human came. His name was Thomas. He wasn't a prince. He wasn't rich. He was just a cargo worker from Earth hired to carry supplies to the Solarian palace. He didn't look special. He wore a simple uniform. His hands were rough from lifting boxes. But when he heard about the bonding ceremony, he did something no one expected. He walked up to the royal platform and said, "I'll bond with her." The whole court went silent. An alien noble stepped forward, his eyes full of anger. "You? A human? Do you even understand our customs?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, and I accept. I don't need to see her face." Laughter broke out across the room. Tall, proud aliens in silver robes whispered to each other. Some called him a fool. Others said he was brave, or stupid. But Thomas didn't move. He kept his eyes on the figure behind the veil. The princess sat silently on her high chair, hidden behind silver fabric that shimmered like moonlight. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But something in her heart stirred. No one had ever stepped forward so quickly, and so calmly. A voice echoed through the hall. It was the High Priest of Celaria, Thomas of Earth. "If you wish to bond, you must pass the 3 tests: truth, courage, and patience. If you fail, you will be sent away forever. Do you accept?" Thomas said, "I do." The first test began that same day. They brought Thomas into a dark room, lit only by a floating blue orb. Around him stood 3 alien elders. One of them said, "Tell us your truth. Tell us your deepest weakness." Thomas looked at them and said, "I doubt myself. I always feel like I'm not enough, like I don't belong in big places like this. But I try anyway." The elders looked at each other surprised. Many suitors had lied, claiming they had no fears. But this human spoke honestly, without shame. They allowed him to pass. The second test was of courage. Thomas was taken to the edge of a deep pit filled with glowing fireflies. "Jump," they said. "Only the brave will survive." Without asking questions, Thomas jumped. He fell for seconds that felt like hours, but the fireflies caught him gently. It was a test of trust. He passed again. The final test was patience. Thomas was locked inside a silent room. He had no food, no water, no clock. He didn't know how much time passed. 1 day, 2, 5. No one spoke to him. But Thomas stayed calm. He closed his eyes. He thought about Earth. He remembered helping his sick mother. He remembered fixing his old ship with broken tools. Waiting wasn't new to him. When the doors finally opened, Thomas was still sitting quietly, looking at the stars through a small window. He had passed all 3 tests. The court didn't know how to react. Never before had a human come this far, The night before the bonding ceremony, Thomas was allowed to enter the garden where the princess sat alone, still veiled. They were not allowed to touch. They could only talk. She spoke first, her voice soft and sad. "Why do you want to bond with someone you cannot see?" Thomas looked at the stars and said, "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible. People looked at me and saw a worker, a nobody. But one person once saw more in me. That changed my life. Maybe I can do the same for you." The princess was quiet for a long time. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Finally, she said, "I'm afraid." "Me too," Thomas replied. "But maybe we can be brave together." She turned her head toward him, even though he couldn't see her eyes. "Tomorrow, you can still walk away." Thomas shook his head gently. I won't. As he left the garden, guards and advisors whispered in corners. Some believed the bond would bring shame. Others feared it would bring change. But none of them could stop what had already started. Behind the veil, the alien princess touched her chest. For the first time in years, her heart felt warm, and tomorrow, the galaxy would watch as a human stood beside her. The next morning, Celaria's twin suns rose slowly, casting golden light over the marble palace. In the grand chamber, the council gathered once again. Aliens of all shapes and colors filled the seats. Their eyes were focused on one thing. The human named Thomas. He stood at the center, quiet but steady. Across from him, behind the veil, sat the princess. Her hands trembled slightly beneath her long sleeves. She had stayed up the whole night thinking about the man who didn't walk away. Now, he had to face the final and most dangerous part, the test of faith. The high priest stepped forward. His voice echoed across the chamber. Thomas of Earth, you passed the first trials, but now you must prove your heart. You must show that your bond is real, not for reward or beauty, but for truth. Thomas nodded. I understand. Suddenly, a group of guards marched in with a large silver box. They opened it slowly, and inside was a creature. It looked like a mix of a wolf and a snake. Its eyes burned red. It growled low, dangerous. The crowd gasped. This is the suitor, the priest said. It reads minds, it senses lies. If your heart hides selfishness, it will attack. Thomas took a breath. He stepped forward. The suitor sniffed him, circled him, stared into his eyes. Silence. Then, slowly, it lowered its head. It curled beside Thomas's feet and let out a gentle purr. The crowd exploded in shock. No one had ever passed the suitor's judgment without shaking or running, but Thomas stood tall, calm. The high priest whispered something to one of the council members. The aliens did not look pleased. Thomas had passed again. But the test wasn't over. A second door opened. This time a young alien girl was pushed forward. She was trembling. The guards said, "This is Miria. She was caught stealing medicine for her sick mother. The law says she must be punished." The priest looked at Thomas. "Your next test. Judgment. You have one choice. Save her, and you will face the punishment in her place. Or walk away, and she will be taken." The room was silent. Thomas looked at the girl, then at the guards, then at the princess still hidden behind the veil. He stepped forward, placing his hand gently on Miria's shoulder. "I'll take her place," he said. Gasps filled the air again. The guards moved toward him, ready to bind his hands. But the high priest raised his palm. Enough. It was a test. The guards stopped. The girl vanished in a blink. Just an illusion. "You have passed," the priest said. "You chose pain over comfort. Not many nobles would do the same." The alien leaders whispered nervously. They didn't expect this. Still, one last part remained. "You will now face your own heart," the priest said. "Enter the chamber of echoes." Thomas was led into a dark room. It had no lights, no guards, no sounds, just a tall mirror. As soon as he looked into it, the mirror shimmered and showed his past, his mother on a hospital bed, him working in freezing space docks to buy medicine, his friends laughing at his dreams, the pain, the loneliness, the hunger. But then, it showed the princess, her veiled figure, her lonely voice, the pain behind her silence. And then, it showed a future of them standing side by side, not as ruler and worker, but as equals. Thomas blinked. The mirror went black. The door opened. Outside, the princess had stood up from her throne. For the first time, she stepped toward him, slowly, carefully. Her voice was low, but strong. "You passed every test." Thomas smiled. "I didn't do it to win. I did it because it felt right." She nodded. Even behind the veil, her eyes glistened, But their moment was broken. An elder alien slammed his staff on the floor. "This is madness," he shouted. "He is not one of us. He is a human." Others joined him. "We will not accept this bond. The bloodlines must stay pure." The princess turned toward them. Her voice didn't shake this time. "You asked me to wait years for a suitor who would love me without seeing me. Now I've found one. And you want to throw him away?" The chamber went quiet. Thomas stood beside her. They didn't hold hands. They didn't speak. But in that silence, the bond had already begun. Far above, the twin suns of Silaria touched for a brief second in the sky, a rare sign of blessing, but not everyone believed it was a blessing. Some saw it as a warning, and deep in the shadows of the palace, something ancient began to stir. The sky over Silaria had turned deep purple. As the twin moons rose, casting soft silver light across the palace, the hallways grew quiet. Too quiet. Thomas stood alone in the Garden of Echoes. The grass beneath his boots glowed faint blue, and strange, singing flowers swayed in the wind. He looked around, unsure if he was allowed here, but he had been summoned by a message carved into stone outside his chamber. Come to the garden. Alone. No guards. He thought it might be a trap, but something inside him whispered, "Go anyway." The garden was ancient. Many bonding ceremonies had begun here long ago when the stars were still young. Now it was a forgotten place. Only one other person stood beneath the glowing trees. She wore the same silver veil. The alien princess. "You came," she said softly. Thomas nodded. "Your message was strange. I had to speak to you without eyes watching," she replied. They sat on a crystal bench. The air shimmered with small glowing orbs, called dreamflies, that floated lazily through the night. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she asked, "Do you fear me?" Thomas blinked. "No. Should I?" "You don't know what's under this veil," she said. "You don't know the curse. My face, it carries shame, horror. My people say it is a punishment from the stars." "Is it painful?" "Only when I believe them." Thomas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Can I tell you something?" "Yes." "When I was 12, my face got burned in a fire at the ship docks," he said quietly. "Kids at school laughed at me. I stopped looking in mirrors. I wore hats. I even tried to bleach the scar. But my mom told me this: if your heart is kind, your face is always beautiful to someone." The princess didn't reply. Her hands gripped the edge of her veil. "You are the first person I've ever talked to like this," she whispered. "Not even my advisors know my real voice. They only follow orders." Thomas looked around the glowing garden. "You can tell me anything. No mask. No titles." She turned to him. "Would you still stand beside me if I was ugly? If people laughed? If your own kind mocked you?" Thomas didn't hesitate. "Yes." Before she could respond, a sharp sound echoed from the bushes nearby. Snap. Thomas stood instantly. His training from Earth's dockyards kicked in. Someone was there, watching, listening. From the darkness, two shadows moved. Tall, armored, with glowing red visors. Thomas stepped in front of the princess. "Who are you?" But the figures disappeared in a blink. The princess stood shaken. "They are not mine. They're from the old faction." Old faction? Those who believe no alien royal should ever bond with an outsider. They believe in blood purity, in power by birth, not by choice. Thomas's jaw clenched. "So they were spying? Or planning something worse?" she said. Just then, a breeze blew harder, and the princess's veil fluttered. For a split second, a sliver of her face was revealed. Thomas saw it, a scar that ran from her right cheek to her jaw. It shimmered with strange silver light, almost like it was alive. But in that moment, Thomas didn't flinch, didn't stare. He just looked into her eyes and smiled. She quickly fixed her veil, her heart beating like a drum. "You saw?" "Yes," Thomas said softly. "And it didn't change a thing." Tears welled up behind her veil. She quickly turned away. You should go. They will try to stop the bond now. Let them try, Thomas replied. I didn't. Come here to walk away. Suddenly, a small drone flew above them, blinking red. It was a message from the high priest. Bonding day moved forward. Come at sunrise, no delays. The princess frowned. They're rushing it. Why? Thomas narrowed his eyes. Maybe they want it over before others support us, before the people speak. A sudden idea struck her. We must send a message, not to the council, but to the people. What kind of message? Hope, she said. They've only seen me as a symbol, not a voice, but if we stand together tomorrow, if we bond with truth, they will see. Thomas smiled. Then let's make them see. As they left the garden, the dreamflies followed them, but in the far distance, deep within the palace shadows, a dark figure watched them closely. His voice whispered into a hidden communicator. Prepare the false priest. The human must not survive the dawn. The palace of Celeria was quiet before dawn. Not peaceful. Quiet like a breath held too long. Guards marched slower than usual. Servants whispered instead of speaking. And in the royal chambers, the alien princess stood by her window, watching the sky change color from blue to fire orange. Her veil rested beside her on the table. For once she was not hiding. Today was bonding day. But something didn't feel right. Across the palace in a guest chamber, Thomas was awake too. He tightened the strap on his boots, checked the small metal band the princess had given him, a bonding charm shaped like two stars crossing. Suddenly the lights flickered. He looked up. The room buzzed with a strange sound, like energy trying to push through thick air. Then silence again. He stepped out into the hallway and smelled smoke. The fire alarm stayed silent. Thomas ran. As he turned the corner, flames exploded behind him. Heat slammed into his back, throwing him to the ground. A second blast came from the east wing. The princess. Thomas pushed through the thick air, coughing, eyes burning. Fire licked the walls. He saw two royal guards lying unconscious. Someone had used stun weapons. He reached the main corridor and kicked open the crystal door to the princess's chamber. She stood inside, surrounded by fire, but her veil was off, her face uncovered, and her eyes wide with fear. Thomas! She shouted. He ran in, grabbed a thick curtain, and wrapped it around her. Together they burst through the flames, coughing and stumbling out into the open courtyard. Alarms finally blared. Guards rushed in. Water jets blasted the flames. The high priest arrived last, dressed in his golden robes. His expression was calm, but his eyes were cold. What happened? He asked. Thomas looked straight at him. Someone tried to kill us. The priest didn't react. You are safe now, but bonding must still happen. The crowd is waiting. The princess held Thomas's arm. It's too dangerous. Which is why, the priest said slowly, it must happen now. Quickly. Publicly. Thomas narrowed his eyes. You're hiding something. But before he could speak more, two guards stepped forward. You will come with us, now. They weren't asking. In the grand bonding chamber, thousands of aliens stood packed into the circular arena. The sky dome above them shimmered. News drones floated in the air, ready to broadcast across the galaxy. The announcer spoke. Today we witness a rare union, a human and a Celerian royal. As the crowd clapped slowly, Thomas walked into the arena, standing at the center. He looked around. The princess hadn't arrived yet. Then the priest stepped forward. In place of the princess, I will begin the ritual. Wait, Thomas said, eyes scanning the arena. Where is she? No answer. I will speak the ancient words, the priest said, raising his staff. But Thomas stepped back. No, not until she's here. Suddenly, the crowd gasped. A second priest entered the arena, older, with a scar over one eye. His voice boomed. He's a fake. I am the true high priest. Guards pointed weapons. People shouted, and through the chaos, the princess arrived, not in a royal dress, but in armor, silver and black, glowing faint blue at the seams. Her face was still uncovered. Proud, fierce. "Enough lies," she said. "This was a trap. They tried to burn us. They tried to silence us." The fake priest pulled out a blade, but before he could strike, Thomas tackled him to the ground. The real priest raised his hand. Guards arrested the impostor. Silence fell again. The princess walked to Thomas, standing face to face. "Do you still want this after everything?" Thomas smiled through the ash on his skin. "More than ever." She held out her hand. He took it, and, under the twin suns rising behind them, a new bond began. No veil, no secrets, no lies. Only truth. The crowd, stunned for a moment, suddenly erupted into wild cheers. But far above, in a hidden starship orbiting the planet, a dark figure watched the ceremony on a screen. "The bond has started," a voice said. "What are your orders?" The figure turned away from the screen. "Let them enjoy their moment," he whispered. "It won't last." The bond had begun. The princess had shown her face to the galaxy, and the human had taken her hand. In front of everyone, but the aftershock was just beginning. News spread like wildfire across the stars. Every space station, colony, and ship played the moment over and over. The alien princess with her silver scar, standing tall beside a dusty, tired-looking human. Some cheered, some cried, some wanted blood. On the planet Dravi, a warlord threw a glass screen against the wall. "A scarred royal bonding with a dirt-born human? Shame. Burn Stellaria if they don't stop this madness." On Station Zeta 4, young aliens wept in joy. "If she can bond despite her scars, maybe we can too," one said. And in the palace of Stellaria, the royal court was falling apart. Inside the royal hall, the Elder Council sat in panic. 12 alien nobles in long robes argued, shouted, and blamed each other. A tall woman with blue skin slammed her fist on the table. "He is not one of us. This bond is illegal. You said no one would see her face," another shouted. "Now the whole galaxy has seen it." But one younger voice spoke with calm. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." They all turned to stare at him. Meanwhile, in the Garden of Mirrors, Thomas and the princess sat quietly. No guards, no advisors, no masks. She no longer wore her veil. The moonlight touched the scar on her cheek. It wasn't ugly. It shimmered like starlight trapped in skin. Thomas looked at her. Not like she was a ruler, not like she was royalty, but like she was simply her. "You didn't even blink when you saw my scar," she said softly. "I didn't see a scar," he replied. "I saw a story." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "My father once told me I would never be loved. He said my face would make people look away. I believed him, until you." Thomas touched the bonding charm around his neck. "I was nothing, special back home. Just a worker. But when you let me see you, the real you, I felt seen too." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny folded note. "I want to show you something." Thomas opened it. It was a drawing, childish, rough, drawn in ink, a girl with a scar, standing on a hill, holding hands with someone with short hair. "I drew this when I was 8, she whispered. "I didn't know who you were then, but I think I was waiting for you." Thomas didn't speak. He couldn't. The lump in his throat was too big. Just then, a soft beep came from the crystal panel nearby. A message. "Urgent. Council summons you both to the judgment chamber. Now." Inside the judgment chamber, cold. Silent. Massive. Like standing, inside a stone heart, the council faced them. In the center, the real high priest stood with a scroll. "By ancient law," he said, "the bond must be accepted by bloodline approval or challenged." An elder stepped forward. "We challenge it," the priest raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" "Her face," the elder spat. She is cursed. He is dirt-blooded. They bring weakness, the crowd murmured. But some aliens nodded in disagreement. The princess stepped forward, her voice clear. For years you told me to hide, to wait, to be silent. I obeyed. But today I speak and I say this. No more hiding. Gasps. She turned to Thomas. If they want to remove my title, let them. But they cannot remove my truth. Thomas walked to her side. And I'm not leaving. The priest paused, then unrolled the scroll. By law, if two bonded souls stand before us, and neither steps back, their bond is declared true. He raised his staff. But before he could speak, a thunderous boom shook the palace. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. What was that? Someone shouted. A guard rushed in. A warship, unknown class, entering orbit, weapons armed. Panic exploded. Thomas turned to the princess. They didn't come for peace. And in the sky above, a black ship blocked the twin moons, its symbol glowing red, the mark of the blood purists. They hadn't just come to stop the bond, they had come to destroy it. The sky over Sileria cracked open with thunder. But it wasn't a natural storm. A massive warship, black, spiked, and covered in red tribal symbols, hovered above the palace like a blade ready to fall. Its engines roared like beasts. Alien citizens across the capital screamed and ran for shelter. Inside the palace, alarms screamed louder than the people. Thomas and the princess stood frozen in the judgment chamber. The bonding ritual had just been declared true, seconds before the attack began. They came faster than we expected, Thomas said. No, the princess replied, eyes burning. They were always watching, waiting for the moment I removed the veil. Above, in the warship, a cold voice echoed through the command deck. Fire only if the princess refuses to surrender the bond. It was General Vakir, leader of the blood purists. His skin was pale and cracked like stone. Half his face was covered in ancient war metal. His eyes burned with pure hatred. No alien royal bonds with a human, he growled. It ends today. Back in the palace, the council members argued, panicked. Give her to them, one shouted. If she steps down, they will leave. The high priest slammed his staff. This is sacred ground. We do not surrender our own to tyrants. But the princess raised her hand. Enough! Everyone went quiet. She stepped forward, her voice calm, but powerful. Send a message to their ship. Tell them this. I will speak to them, face to face. Thomas looked at her. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, she said. But I won't. Go alone. Soon after, on the palace landing platform, a sleek transport ship prepared for launch. Thomas and the princess stepped inside, guarded by only 3 loyal warriors. As they rose into the sky, heading straight toward the enemy warship, tension filled. Every breath. Are you scared? She asked him. Yes, Thomas admitted. But standing with you feels stronger than running. She smiled slightly. Then let's face this storm together. Inside the enemy ship's command hall, General Vakir stood like a statue as the doors opened. His soldiers lined the walls, their weapons ready. The princess entered first, her chin high, her veil gone. Thomas followed unshaken. You dare bring him here, Vakir spat. He is my bonded, she said, and your threats mean nothing now. Vakir laughed cruelly. You think you can change the laws of blood? We have ruled for centuries. Humans are nothing. Thomas stepped forward. Maybe, but your fear tells me we're more than you want to admit. Vakir's eyes narrowed. You protect him, then you will fall with him. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the princess raised her palm. A pulse of blue light exploded from a hidden crystal in her glove. The lights flickered. Every weapon in the room jammed at once. Thomas blinked. What did you just do? She looked at him with a fire in her eyes. I'm not just a princess. I'm a defender of Sileria, and I know this ship. The guards panicked. Chaos erupted. Soldiers ran for cover. Thomas grabbed one of their weapons and tossed it aside. What? Now? We go to the core, she said. We shut the ship down. Racing through the warship, Thomas and the princess ran through narrow metal halls. Alarms screamed. Steam hissed from vents. Sparks flew from the walls. Soldiers tried to stop them, but her glove disabled every weapon they raised. Finally, they reached the core room. A huge glowing engine pulsed with energy. The princess placed her palm on the control panel. This engine powers every system. If we overload it, we blow the ship? Thomas asked. No, we blind it. Their weapons, shields, and flight systems, all frozen. Do it. She pressed down. Lights burst. Energy surged. The ship shook violently. From the outside, citizens on Solaria saw the warship's red lights vanish. Slowly, the giant monster began to fall, drifting like a dying shadow. But before the final shutdown, Vakir appeared again, burned, furious, holding a blade. He lunged. Thomas stepped in front of the princess, unarmed. The blade sliced across his shoulder. He cried out, falling to one knee. The princess screamed and grabbed the blade with her bare hands, activating her glove again. Energy surged into Vakir's body. He dropped to the floor, unconscious. Later, on the palace steps, Thomas sat bandaged as the crowd gathered below. The ship had crashed far from the city, no longer a threat. The princess stood beside him, uncovered, proud. The crowd looked up. Then, slowly, they clapped. Then more clapped, until the entire plaza thundered with applause. She raised Thomas's hand. No one spoke against them now. But in the silence between cheers, one final question burned. What comes next for the bond that changed a world? Solaria was forever changed. The skies were clear again. The enemy warship lay broken beyond the mountains. The blood purists had been defeated, their leader captured. But more than that, the veil was gone. Not just from the princess's face, but from the hearts of the people. The story of the scarred alien royal and the humble human had spread across galaxies. Billions had watched the broadcast. Millions had cried. And now, thousands gathered in Solaria's capital, waiting to see what would happen next. Would the council strip her title? Would they exile the human? Or would something new begin? In the palace garden, Thomas walked slowly through the Garden of Echoes, the same place where he first heard her voice behind the veil. But today, there were no shadows, no secrets. The trees glowed softly. Dreamflies floated like stars around him, and, waiting in the center was her. No veil, no armor, just a simple silver dress, no crown, no guards, just her. When she turned to him, her scar glowed faintly under the moonlight. But there was no sadness in her eyes, only peace. You came, she said. I was afraid, he admitted. Of what? That you'd be forced to choose between me and your world. She stepped forward. I already chose. Inside the throne room, the high priest stood before the ancient seat of rulers. The council watched from their chairs. The hall was quiet, tense. We gather, the priest said, to decide not what to do with the bond, but what to become because of it. He turned to the princess. Do you still wish to stand by the human? She nodded. Yes. And you, Thomas of Earth, do you accept the weight of this bond, even if it means facing more hate? I do, he replied. A long pause. Then the priest raised his staff high. Then let this be known across all systems. Today, for the first time in our history, a bond of two worlds is accepted without bloodlines, without titles, without masks. The chamber shook, not from danger but from thunderous applause. A new era had begun. 1 week later, in the heart of the city, Thomas walked through the public square. He wasn't in armor or fine clothes, just a simple jacket. But everywhere he went, aliens bowed their heads or gave him small nods of respect. A group of alien children ran up to him. Is it true you held her hand even before you saw her? Yes, Thomas said, smiling. Why? He looked at them. Because the heart doesn't need eyes. The children smiled. Meanwhile, the princess stood before a crowd of leaders, From across the galaxy today, she said, we end the old ways. The rules that made people hide their faces, their stories, their pain. We don't need perfection to be worthy. We only need truth. Behind her, Thomas stood quietly, not as a king, but as her partner. And for the first time in Solarian history, the people clapped not for power, not for beauty, but for courage. Later, in the quiet of the bonding chamber, the princess sat beside Thomas, legs folded under her, a small flame flickering between them. Do you remember what you said the night before you saw me? She asked. He nodded. I said I wouldn't walk away. You didn't. You never asked me to. She reached over, gently touching the scar on his shoulder. This is a mark of love. He touched the one on her face. So is this. And in that quiet room where truth had once been a risk, now it was a home. Far away in a lonely prison cell, General Vakir sat chained to the wall. A screen played the image of the princess and Thomas, standing before the United Systems. He growled, they will forget. Love fades. But deep down he knew the truth. Some love stories don't fade. Some love stories break chains. Final scene. Years later, 2 small children ran through the same glowing garden. One had dark hair and green skin. The other had pale hair and earth-toned eyes. They laughed, chasing dreamflies, and sitting on the bench beneath the same tree were the princess and Thomas, older now, wiser, still together, still bonded, because one day a human dared to reach for a hand he couldn't see and ended up touching a galaxy.